Hello, and welcome to the Daily Poem. I'm Heidi White, filling in today for David Kern. Today I'm going to read for you Shakespeare's Sonnet 73. Today is considered by many to be Shakespeare's birthday, or at least his baptism day. There is some debate in the Shakespearean scholarly community as to what day he was actually born, and nobody's really sure. But we do know that this week is really the beginning and, of course, then later the ending also of Shakespeare's life, because he died over the course of this week in April as well. So, in his honor, the greatest master of the English language in the history of the world, today we will read one of his greatest and most famous sonnets, Sonnet 73 by Shakespeare. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of each day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well, which thou must leave ere long. Like I said, this is one of Shakespeare's most famous sonnets. It is, of course, 14 lines of iambic pentameter. That's what makes a sonnet. And every other line rhymes until you get to the last two lines, which those two rhyme. They're called a couplet. So I chose this sonnet to read to you today because something very important happened in my life this week. One is it was Shakespeare's birthday and death day, and that's always big. And then also I turned 40 this week. It was my birthday. And so I've been thinking about aging, about what it means to grow old, which is a long time away for me still because I'm only 40, but I am 40. So I've been thinking a lot this week about this. And so I chose this sonnet because this sonnet, Sonnet 73, is a meditation on aging and the impact that that makes upon the soul and the impact that makes upon love. So in this poem, Shakespeare uses a series of metaphors to talk about and kind of explore and contemplate the idea of aging. I'm continually amazed by Shakespeare's mastery of the unity of content and form. You can see through his rhymes and through his metaphors and through the rhythms how Shakespeare uses the form of the sonnet, which is a very constrictive, rigid form, and then uses that to pack in all of these ideas and comparisons and contemplations and metaphors into such a short, poetic form. It's really quite amazing. So in the first quatrain, or group of 4 lines, the narrator of this poem compares his life to a bough of dying leaves in the autumn. Then he moves on to talk also about after sunset fading in the west. In other words, aging is light extinguished by darkness. Aging is the dying of the leaves on the bough where bare, ruined choirs previously had sung. He compares the night to death's second self. And this is a pretty common image in the Renaissance and medieval times to think of sleep and night as being a little death. And then you wake up in the morning to every day a little resurrection. Then he kind of moves on in the poem to this really cool and complex metaphor of youth being consumed with that which it was nourished by. That is to say that as a fire dies, it is extinguished in the embers. The burning coals that had nourished the fire are that which consumes it in the end. And so our youth, like that fire, consumes itself. There is some pathos in this poem. It's not so much depressing as it is a contemplation of what it means to grow old, to see your life becoming what he calls the bare, ruined choir, to see that extinguishing of the light, which, of course, that idea influences later poems with Dylan Thomas and others. And then at the end, this couplet, kind of he builds on these metaphors that he's been using before, the metaphor of the falling leaves on the bough, the metaphor of the dusk and the light fading into darkness, and then this really cool metaphor of the fire consuming itself. As he goes through those three, then we get to the couplet. And a lot of times in a sonnet, when you get to the couplet at the end, those two rhyming lines in a row, they make some kind of statement that resolves the tension or deepens the tension or brings some kind of wisdom or a new twist, a way of looking at something. That couplet in a poem often is crucial to understanding and reinventing the meaning of the rest of it. And in this poem is no exception to that. So in this last couplet, we have this thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well, which thou must leave ere long. So in this contemplation of aging, which of course leads to the end of life, Shakespeare drags in love. And it's not forced, it's a natural transition, because almost all of Shakespeare's sonnets have to do with the theme and the contemplation of what it means to love another human being. And in this case, he's contrasting that powerful love, that deep love that we have for somebody in our life, and contrasting that with the fear of death, and saying, because we are mortal, because we are heading to the end of our lives, because we are bare ruined choirs on a bough, because our youth consumes itself and the light will be extinguished in us, because of that, how brave is it to love, to make the heart and the love more strong, to love what we must leave ere long. So as he's meditating on aging and death, he shifts it there in the couplet to a meditation on the transcendent power of love in the face of death. And he uses the form to do it, right? Once we have the quatrains that kind of contemplate these metaphors, and you're a little bit sad. And then when you get to the end, you see, wow, it is a strong love that can love even though life sometime will end. So I'm going to read the poem one more time. Sonnet 73 by William Shakespeare. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long. This has been the Daily Poem. Thank you, and happy reading.